I've done a couple of videos about the incident in St Pancras Station, which has captured public attention and is really riddling the internet and YouTube at the moment. And it's reignited deep concerns about justice, policing and political radicalism in Britain. And at the centre of this episode stands Tommy Robinson, the controversial figure whose latest actions raise pressing questions, I think, about the rule of law, the state of public discourse, and he's now commented on the event, and I want to go through that calmly and carefully. So footage circulated widely on social media, and it shows an unconscious man lying face down on the concourse of St Pancras International with what appears to be a bag over his head. Tommy Robinson is seen walking down the stairs and then coming back, pacing and audibly shouting, "He came at me, bruv, you saw that." It's not clear what caused the man's injuries. We don't know who initiated any confrontation, if there was a confrontation, or whether Robinson's claim of self-defence is legitimate. However, we do know this: a man was seriously injured and hospitalised. Now, of course, he came at me, bruv, you saw that could simply mean that this fellow sort of walked straight into him and then was fell over. Who knows? Who knows? That is one possibility. But it's not quite how it appears when you look at the statement that Tommy Robinson has put up in Twitter. The statement that Tommy Robinson has put up in Twitter talks about getting a clip around the ear hole, and that changes the tone slightly. And this man is seriously injured, hospitalised, and Robinson, the only named suspect, left the country hours after the event. Now, British Transport Police have confirmed that a, quote, 42-year-old man from Bedfordshire is the only suspect in an alleged assault and boarded a flight in the early hours of July the 29th. I'm getting that information, I think, from the Sun newspaper. Forensic investigators have since examined the site, taking DNA swabs and photographing bloodstains on stair rails. Since leaving, Robinson has broken his silence. And not to explain what happened. Instead, he's used his platform to promote the next protest march on the 13th of September. He has spoken of uniting the kingdom and resisting what he calls the tyranny of the Online Safety Act, a concept with which, frankly, I might agree. This is what he's posted on Twitter. I'm going to read it out. September the 13th. We don't just unite the kingdom, but the world. Free speech has never been under attack the way it is being now. Recently added to this suppression was the Online Safety Bill. Focus on what is right. Focus on what is needed. Focus on our country. Focus on our country needs and what its people deserves. What its people deserve. I think there's some grammar going wrong here. Join us in central London as we take a stand against tyranny. We won't be silenced. Well, Robinson also reposted a tweet from another user which read, "If you approach someone with hostility, a man that receives death threats daily, expect to get a clip round the ear hole." But this post was no accident. It seems in many ways to be a well-rehearsed tactic of distract, deflect, reframe, and his silence on the alleged assault is a glaring omission. The public deserves more than vague slogans and reposted tweets about preemptive violence. What we have witnessed is violence in a public space, and certainly from my point of view, it makes me wonder whether or not it's safe to enter a railway station. A serious incident occurred, a man was hurt, and the main witness, if not the perpetrator, left the country without fully engaging with the police. This is not the behaviour of someone acting with transparency. It's the behaviour of someone who appears, at the very least, to be evading proper scrutiny. Now, of course, I think you have to have a little bit of sympathy for somebody who has recently left prison, because any sort of question mark over his behaviour is likely to end up with a protracted interrogation in a police station, and you can imagine somebody trying to avoid that situation. But in law, even if you're talking about self-defense, that needs to be proportionate and necessary in a moment of genuine threat. And the claim of a preemptive strike, now popular among Robinson's online supporters, is not a blanket justification for violence. One has to be very careful about invoking self-defense, especially if fleeing the scene. It's not to say that Tommy Robinson has anything to defend or explain, but as Americans say, the optics don't look good. In Criminal Law Act, the Criminal Law Act 1967, Section 3, as well as a more recent clarification in the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act 2008, allows for self-defense as a defense, but it's a legal defense, not an excuse. And the case of Clegg in 1995, a soldier who used excessive force after a threat had passed, and he was then found guilty of murder, a timing and necessity matter. The more famous case of Anthony Martin, in 2002, who shot burglars in the back as they fled. He was convicted of murder, later reduced to manslaughter because of diminished responsibility, and the force was found to be excessive. You may defend yourself or others, but you must show, 1, that you genuinely believe force was necessary, 2, that the force was proportionate, and 3, that you didn't act out of revenge or excessive aggression. The UK law doesn't allow vigilante justice, and the problem is therefore that if Robinson or someone he was with was attacked and he put up a defence, then the burden would be on him, I presume, to report the attack and his actions properly and face police questioning. It's not enough, I think, to say, he came at me, bruv. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm sure the black belt barrister could give a much more cogent analysis. But instead of clarity, what we're presented with is a media spectacle, an edited film clip that seems to be taken just after the attack. And what follows then is a tribal chorus together with clipped slogans and the cult of personality, together with a very tardy response from the authorities. Now, the law is not theatre. It doesn't yield to likes, to follows, or to reposts. But the public reaction, I think, has been troubling. Some have issued threats online, even death threats, in response to the footage. And we should be unequivocal. Such responses are morally indefensible and undermine any legitimate concern about what occurred. And this is not about taking sides. This is about upholding basic civic standards. It is possible to criticise Robinson's politics and still insist that he, like anyone else, is entitled to due process. Equally important is the question of policing. How is someone involved in a violent incident in one of the UK's most secure public transport hubs able to leave the country so quickly, or indeed able to leave St Pancras in the first place? St Pancras is under heavy surveillance. Yet there's no immediate containment of the scene. There appears to have been a delay in securing evidence and even identifying Robinson as the suspect. One might reasonably ask, was this incompetence? Was it indifference? Or should one even suggest that there's been some sort of plan? That's certainly been put forward in comments. The internet is full of speculation, some people suggesting it was a put-up job to stop the event on the 13th of September. But whatever the case is, the public trust is the thing that suffers most. When figures like Robinson walk away from crime scenes and board planes while others face stop and search for far less, it corrodes confidence in our justice system. This is not simply about Tommy Robinson, it's about whether Britain still has the institutional will to enforce its own laws impartially. And Robinson's career thrives on confrontation between them and us, the people and the elite, the silenced and the system. But these binaries are illusions, and no democracy can function if public figures weaponize grievance to avoid responsibility. And no public should be so jaded that they accept a situation in which men can promote marches while ducking arrest warrants. In the end, this incident tells us two things. First, that Tommy Robinson, whether guilty or innocent, owes the public a clear explanation and the authorities his full cooperation for something that happened in a public space. Justice cannot be optional. Second, that the British state must decide whether it is serious about equal justice or whether it is one rule for one person and another for someone else. And what would Farage say now about this proposed three strikes plan, particularly with overcrowded prisons? This is not a moment for tribal loyalties or for partisan speech. This is a moment to ask, do we still expect our citizens to face the law, or only those who lack a following, or only those who are in the public eye? To let Robinson flee without scrutiny is not an insult to the man who has been in prison. It's an insult to the man who lies injured, whoever that might be, and however culpable or innocent he may be of the events. But it's an insult as well to all those who believe that justice matters in the UK. Not only justice, but security. And I come back to the point that I made earlier on. I feel very nervous about security now in public spaces. If it takes it took 10 minutes. It was filmed 10 minutes before the police arrived. That is shocking. That is shocking in a situation where there was serious harm done. It may have been an accident. It may have been intentional. It may have been a set-up job. It doesn't matter. 10 minutes for the police to come. 10 minutes. I think utterly shocking.